Like America, which participated very late in the World War II. Oh my god.
It's so sad.
Over 400,000 died.
Hey guys, it's the Loud Guys. Today we are going to react to the fallen of World War II. And in this video we are going to see all those people that have given their lives in the World War II and that were like martyred in World War II. And World War II was a very big event, and this was sent to us by most of the American guys. And if we go back to World War II and all the facts that we know about World War II, America entered very late in the World War II. It was about 1945, and then America entered and mostly finished the job and then got out, and like the World War was ended. So I don't think so there would be much Americans in this, but I think so there will be many Indians in this, because in many Indians were supportive of the British, were under the British rule. So because of that, many Indian soldiers went to fight for the Britishers. So what happened and how many lives were gone, I am very excited to see. So let's see.
Same, I'm also excited to watch this. And if I tell truth about you, so about myself, so I don't have that much idea about World War II. The only thing which I know about World War is basically it was a global war and it lasted from 1939 to 1945, and there was an involvement of around 30 countries in it. Basically World War II did a huge loss to a property, money, to a property, land, and obviously for the life. And the thing which I know about World War is basically it killed around 40 crore to 50 crore people. So yeah, I'm also excited to watch this video because I want to know the things which I don't know about World War II. So yeah, I'm so excited. So yeah, let's see.
Yeah, and also this video should be an eye opener for everyone who is very excited about World War III. Like everybody gets so excited, like, oh, there should be World War III between Russia, USA, and like China and everyone. So this video should show to the people that know, see how many lives are going because of these wars, and we should stop these wars and we should not get involved more in these wars. So let's watch this video. Let's start.
The average lifespan of an American is 80 years. And an 80-year-old today was 10 when World War II ended, 4 when it began.
What?
A soldier who saw battle would have to be in his late 80s, at least today. Generals, political leaders,
Oh yes.
the decision makers of the war, few are still with us. And over the past few decades, we've seen authors and filmmakers rush to capture stories from survivors before this connection of memory is lost. This project is not about individual war stories, and it's not about survivors. We're going to tally up the tens of millions of people whose lives are cut short by the war, and see how these numbers stack up to other wars in history, including trends in recent conflicts. We'll be counting soldiers and civilians separately.
Oh,
Each of these figures represents 1,000 people who died.
okay.
1,000 people.
Civilians were of all walks of life, whereas military deaths were almost entirely men. The average age was about 23.
Oh my god.
In most battles, for every 1,000 soldiers killed, there are more than 1,000 who are injured. The word casualty can be confusing because in military speak, it often includes both deaths and injuries, and anything else that takes a soldier out of service. Here, we're just counting the deaths, and we'll begin with American soldiers.
Like America, which participated very late in the World War II. Oh my god.
It's so sad.
Over 400,000 died.
400,000.
Most of the deaths occurred in the European theater, fighting the Nazis. And about a quarter were in the Pacific,
It's
fighting the
heartbreaking, man.
Japanese. When you put them on the timeline, you see that casualties were the heaviest at the end of the war.
Yes.
The war began on September 1st, 1939. But the US wasn't willing to join the fight until
September
Pearl
then.
Harbor, 2 years in. The deaths increased drastically on D-Day, when the Allies invaded Normandy. One of the most tragic moments of the war was on D-Day at Omaha Beach, where 2,500 Americans fell.
My god.
So about the same number of US soldiers died on this single beach landing as the entire 13 years of the recent war in Afghanistan.
What?
The bloodiest battle in the Pacific was Okinawa, which lasted 82 days, during which 12,500 Americans died. About 5,000 of these deaths were at sea from kamikaze attacks.
This is very different to what I knew
Now
about
let's look at
this
some
war.
other countries, starting with Europe. Germany started World War II when it invaded Poland. Poland ultimately lost 200,000 soldiers in the war.
My god.
Most died
It's
after the invasion
insane,
while the
man.
country was occupied by Germany and the Soviet Union.
Post invasion.
Germany, meanwhile, lost just 16,000 in the invasion of Poland. The Nazis went on to invade and conquer other countries, including Denmark, Belgium, the Netherlands, France, Greece, and Yugoslavia. France surrendered, but after losing 92,000 soldiers in the Battle of France. Over 200,000 ultimately fell, which includes deaths in POW camps, French colonies, and other fighting. Yugoslavia suffered almost 500,000 military deaths. The initial invasion brought relatively few casualties on both
Post
sides,
invasion, so many deaths.
but the deaths mounted under Nazi occupation due to guerrilla fighting, civil conflict, and mass executions.
Even after surrendering, they get.
The Nazi
Yes.
invasions were swift, with relatively few German losses. Even the Nazi commanders expressed surprise at their success. And then we have the United Kingdom and the United States, who were not invaded but took the fight to the Nazis. Britain lost about the same number of soldiers as the US, which includes the British colonies. Germany lost about 500,000 soldiers fighting the US and Britain in what is known as the Western Front, which took place in France and Belgium.
Yeah, it's horrible. Literally, it's horrible.
Yes.
But most
actually.
Nazi soldiers died in the Eastern Front. Germany's unsuccessful invasion of the Soviet
Oh my
Union.
god.
The numbers are staggering. The most famous battle of the Eastern Front, and perhaps the turning point of the European war, was Stalingrad. The German Sixth Army successfully took Stalingrad, but then got surrounded by the Soviets and cut off from food and ammunition. 500,000 Nazis would ultimately die in Stalingrad. Another 100,000 were taken prisoner.
I think they took
Of which
the
6,000
human life for granted only.
POWs had a low survival rate throughout World War II, and it was particularly grim in the East. When you include these POWs, roughly the same number of Germans died in Stalingrad as all the Western Front fighting against France, the UK, and the US.
My god.
And though Stalingrad was a victory for the Soviets, they suffered almost twice as many losses as Germany.
Like the tower is not able to completely fit into the video. Oh my
The Soviet
god.
Union would eventually defeat the once unstoppable German army, killing 2.3 million Nazi soldiers.
This is so sad to see.
Same.
But winning the war came at a cost.
Oh my god. This is not stopping. Like we should be very thankful for the world that we live in today.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Soviet Union lost a lot of lives.
Yes. Oh my
And
god.
even still
It's
Russia
so
is attacking
horrible.
Ukraine and still going for all these things. They should stop, man.
8.7 million is the official
Eight-
tally by the
What?
Russian military.
Oh.
A hotly disputed number. Some studies have calculated as many as 14 million dead. To complete the count of
14 million.
European military deaths, we need to add German deaths from other fronts, including the North and Africa, as well as deaths from other Axis powers allied with the Nazis: Hungary, Romania, and Italy. When you put these European military deaths on the timeline, it looks like this. You can now interact with the chart to learn more. Pause the narration if you would like more time.
I'm speechless.
Same.
And now we switch to civilian deaths in Europe.
Oh my god, I'm not ready for this.
Six million Jewish people were killed in the Holocaust.
Oh my god. Only Jewish
If
people.
you separate this by country, you see that about half, 2.7 million, were Polish. 700,000 were Soviets, followed by Hungary and 17 other countries. Broken down another way, about half of the 6 million were killed in the concentration camps. Over 1 million died in Auschwitz. Most were killed in the gas chambers. Others died from starvation, exhaustion, disease, and other forms of execution. The second most deadly camp was Treblinka, which was exclusively an extermination camp, set up to look like a train station.
How
Mobile killing
horrible.
groups killed 1.4 million Jews. Like with the gas chambers, men were killed first to reduce the risk of revolt.
It is so heartbreaking to watch.
Same.
The Holocaust also includes non-Jewish deaths. Between 130,000 to 500,000 Roma, then called Gypsies, were killed.
This is so
The numbers are
heartbreaking.
disputed.
So heartbreaking.
About 250,000 people with disabilities were killed. Homosexuals, Catholics, and other groups were also exterminated, but their numbers were relatively small. Some historians say that other civilian deaths should go under the label of Holocaust. About 2 million non-Jewish Poles were killed under German occupation, some of which were sent to the gas chambers at Auschwitz. When you combine civilian and military deaths, over 16% of the total Polish population died in World War II, which is the highest percentage of any country.
15% of the
But not the
population.
highest in total death count. The Soviet Union again tops that list, losing at least as many civilians as it did soldiers, somewhere between 10 and 20 million. A particularly dark moment for the Soviet Union was the siege of Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. German forces surrounded Leningrad before civilians could be evacuated. Supplies, including food, were cut off for 2.5 years. 1.5 million people died as a result.
What was
Mostly from
that
starvation,
world, man?
mostly civilians. Stalin's cruelty towards his own people is partly responsible for these numbers. He often didn't allow civilians to evacuate from cities, thinking it would cause the soldiers protecting them to fight harder. About 1 million Soviets died in Stalin's own labor camps, called the Gulag. Just about every country suffered civilian losses, especially countries who were invaded.
It's insane.
While many died as a result of so-called collateral damage, the biggest numbers occurred when it was no accident. Civilians were exterminated, purposely fired upon or bombed, used as human shields, or intentionally deprived of food. The intentional killing of civilians was done by most warring parties, including the United Kingdom and the United States. The United Kingdom was spared of a land invasion, but still lost 60,000 civilians, largely from German air raids or blitzes, often directed at civilian population centers. The UK did the same to German cities at a much greater magnitude, causing about 10 times the number of deaths. But most German civilian deaths came from the ground at the late stage of the war. When the Nazi regime collapsed, civilians living in occupied regions had to desperately flee from the advancing Soviet army. Rapes were widespread, and death estimates ranged from 600,000 to 3 million.
Oh my god.
Let's step back and see where we are with the totals.
22 million.
We just counted about 20 million civilian deaths in Europe. If you add this to the European military deaths we already covered, it brings us to over 40 million.
41 million.
I'm feeling so
Then we have the Asian theater.
sad.
Here we see the vast majority of military
Literally, I'm
deaths in Asia
speechless.
came from China and Japan. On the civilian side, about 6 million deaths from China, Indonesia, Korea, Indochina, and the Philippines can be attributed to Japanese war crimes, which are sometimes compared to the Nazi atrocities due to the sheer scale of the cruelty. China had the second highest death count after the Soviet Union. And like the Soviets, the Chinese government demonstrated a stunning willingness to sacrifice its own people. Chinese nationalists opened the dike at the Yellow River, hoping the flood would halt the Japanese advance. 500,000 Chinese civilians or more were killed, which is 2 or 3 times the number who died in all countries in the 2004 Asian tsunamis.
Oh my god.
But the invasion of China only cost Japan 200,000 soldiers. Most were killed fighting the US and Allies in the Pacific War. A significant portion of Japanese civilian deaths were caused by American firebombing and the two nuclear attacks. Contrary to official US statements, these airstrikes were directed at civilian populations, not military targets. When you add all the deaths outside Europe, it brings us to a grand total of 70 million for the war, give or take depending on who's counting and what civilian deaths get included.
This is so
More people
sad.
died in World War II than in
So
any
sad.
other war in history. For comparison, here are 20 or so of the very worst wars and atrocities we have on record.
God.
Some of these are more of atrocities than wars, but we've seen how that distinction can get
British
blurry.
India.
Some of these spanned across centuries. World War II had the highest body count, and it all happened in just 6 years. The world's population has grown significantly since the earliest atrocities on this list. If you want to compare them in terms of what percentage of the world died, we can adjust the chart to look like this. This rough approximation tells us there may have been more devastating wars before World War II,
It's
proportionally
insane.
speaking.
Humans need to stop it, man.
I'm feeling so sad.
When we turn to post-war conflicts, it's hard to say anything that isn't controversial. But the data shows something quite extraordinary has been happening. In 1989, John Gaddis coined the phrase the long peace to identify the absence of conflict between the nuclear powers during the Cold War. 25 years later, the Cold War is over, and the term is still being used, although its meaning may have shifted. European countries have not fought each other, except for this 10-day war in 1956 when the Soviet Union invaded Hungary. When we look at European wars before World War II, it looks like this. They tend to be more frequent as you go back, though smaller in scale.
And we hope
And
it does
the
not
largest
happen
44
again.
economies of the world have not battled each other since World War II. Rich countries have fought poorer countries, like the US versus Iraq. But rich countries have not fought other rich countries. Such a period of peace between the so-called great powers hasn't been seen since the Roman Empire. To many, peace is too strong of a word. Wars have occurred since World War II, and they can be grouped into these 4 categories. We don't see colonial wars anymore. We've already noted that interstate wars between rich countries have not occurred at all, and here we see wars involving smaller economies have tapered off. That leaves civil wars of 2 types, with and without foreign intervention. And this is what these battle deaths look like alongside of World War II. More people died fighting in World War II
Like the
than
world
in
is
all the wars
improving.
since. And again, we can't forget about world population, which has almost tripled since World War II. If we scale these numbers to show deaths in proportion to world population, showing the likelihood that a person on Earth dies in battle, the downward trend becomes even more pronounced. Now, this isn't to infer anything about why this trend is occurring. That's a discussion for another day. You can now interact with this chart to explore what conflicts are behind the totals. Now bear in mind we're just looking at battle deaths here, not civilian deaths, but those too are in decline. Peace is a difficult thing to measure. It's a bit like counting the people who didn't die in wars that never happened. We give such importance to the word peace, but we don't tend to notice it when it occurs, or report on it. Sometimes it takes reminding ourselves of how terrible war once was to see the peace that has been growing around us.
Yes.
Of course, this trend may not continue, and it's not clear how looking at these charts can help us make the right decisions to ensure that it does. But the longer the long peace grows, the more significant it becomes.
Actually.
So if watching the news doesn't make us feel hopeful about where things are heading, watching the numbers might.
Wow. Eye opener video.
I know it's crazy to looking at in the numbers, but imagine if each of their names was listed, if each of their dreams was listed, if each of their families listed, if each of their hopes listed, if each of their food listed, favorite food listed. I know it sucks. After imagining this, I know it sucks. And I do think after rewatching this, we should understand the cost of the human life. And literally, I'm feeling so sad to rewatch this and understand that how much peace is taken for granted. And it sucks. This war killed a lot of tons of people, and this video was heartbreaking. And I'm feeling so terrible, and I do think we should share this video as we can, because after watching this video, maybe we all understand the cost of the human life. And I'm feeling so sad, and I hope that this situation will never create in the future.
Yes, actually, and the thing was, this video was so heartbreaking at the same time, and you could like you have to give credit to the creator of this video because he created the video so well, and it's relayed the message so well, and the every time I was watching this video and all the time I was watching this video, only one thing was coming in my mind, that was Russia. Like
Yeah.
Russia should stop what it is doing at this moment, because you never know when it turns ugly and when it turns into a war. Because at this moment, like what he was saying in the video at the last was like no rich countries are fighting each other, but that can happen now if Russia and US and all the European powers and NATO start to fight each other, and that would be really really horrible, because we have seen what happened in World War II in 70 million lives. That is way too much. And the thing was, in World War One, 15 million, in World War Two, 70 million, in World War Three, we don't even know, because everybody has nuclear weapons and like great weapons and great like fighter tanks and all fighter jets and everything. They have bio weapons, everything at their disposal. So we don't know how much civilians and military lives will be given for this war. So we do not want any war like this. Like many like big authors have writers have said that the third world war will be because of water and
Yeah.
the basic necessities, because of like the way we are exploiting all those needs. So I think that humans will also improve on that front also, and will make sure that everything is in the right place, and the United Nations and everything will work together and make sure that these wars never ever happen again. Because if we see the history, like human history is very bloody, and everybody has been fighting each other for a long time. But he has been showing, like he showed it in the video, like there was peace, like there is peace now, and like long peace and new peace, what you can say. And like rich nations are not fighting each other, smaller nations are fighting, but I think so they will also improve slowly and steadily. And like India and Pakistan also, like previously we had a lot of wars, but since 1999 we did not have a single war, and we have been like fighting small wars, but not big wars, like we
Yeah.
can say. And which is very good, like it is heading towards peace. That should happen in each and every country. And so what was your opinion about this video? This video was heartbreaking and eye-opening at the same time. So what was your opinion about this video? Do let us know in the comment section below. So do like, share, and
Subscribe.
bye.
Bye.